everyone. Welcome to another episode of In Our Humble Opinion.
Ayo.
I'm Gilbert Cheah, and I'm here with my co-conspirators, Daisy Irani on my right,
Namaste.
and Chris Henson on my left.
Co-perspirator, yes.
Yes, that too. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things, always very interesting topics. One is, are Singaporean young job seekers too self-entitled and picky? Should dogs have laws for them, for themselves? And what is happening in Singapore with the problems with child abuse and maid abuse? These are our main topics today. So let's start out first with a very hot topic that's been on making the rounds. It's certainly gone viral. Are Singaporean job seekers too spoiled? It started with a Facebook post when a person shared his interviews with 7 young candidates applying for a job with his company. This is a PMET job, 3K plus salary with 14 days annual leave. And he listed the kind of litany of complaints, issues, negotiations that all these people, who are all Singaporeans, came up with. And basically came to the conclusion where he said that these people are too fussy, we're in an economic crisis now during a pandemic, and that they didn't seem to be hungry for a job. So obviously this caused a lot of reaction, people both agreeing with him and people disagreeing with him. And those who disagreed with him even took it upon themselves to dox him, which I like to remind people is illegal in Singapore, and didn't have such pleasant things to say about him and gave their opinions about it. So we're going to discuss this a little bit now. So why don't we jump right in? Daisy.
Well, I'd like to say that in today's day and age, the contract between the employer and employee, this whole iron rice bowl concept no longer exists.
Yes.
Because now we are in a free market.
Yes.
The economy is free market economy. The resources will move where they are most productive. So the local resources, and let's say we are looking at MNCs because they are the guys who hire the most number of foreigners and they are the most sought after jobs. So let's say you take that as an example. To get these jobs, unfortunately, just being local is not enough.
Yes.
Your skill sets have to step to international standards. Your commitment to the job has to be competitive. And you have to be aware of what is this value the company is expecting from you. And all of this is absolutely doable, absolutely possible. Our locals absolutely have it. It is from your education and your attitude. And you have to be emotionally invested in it. So about this whole argument, I feel, and if I may, you see, I was listening to our PM's speech yesterday, right? And what struck me most during that speech was when he acknowledged that his governing style is so different from Minister Mentor and Goh Chok Tong's. Now, I know he was talking about politics and election, but what actually came across to me was that the tone and engagement of the conversation today has changed. You see, and in the same vein, these conversations with the millennium have changed across the board. The relationships have changed, So I think we have to just strive to educate the new generation to think, more like what would they like to do, because they are not going to go into this beggars can't be choosers, you give me anything, I'm going to go for it. And that's my opinion.
Right.
Okay. And there's just one other thing I feel that, moving forward, I think we have to look ahead and already decide that what is this education we need for future jobs. Like I remember at one point of time, it was nobody wanted to do engineering or talk about IT. I remember this whole discussion of, we can just get the IT guys from India. We can just get them from the Philippines. Today you realize in what direction we have moved. And so I think it's important to look ahead and say, okay, what are these jobs that our millennials are going to, work with?
Right. Okay. Well, the point basically is, do you think that the local job market is too too picky? And do they have a right to be picky? What do you think, Mr. Henson, who's taking a quick little nap there?
No, I was just digesting everything both of you have said, especially what Daisy said. I would just, I run a business. I used to run several businesses, and when you're not the first to say, I also read it on Facebook. Someone mentioned, and I'm not going to mention his name, that taking the side of these guys, of the young, looking for jobs. Oh, don't worry, people should understand. People should mentor you. But look, come on. Businesses have no time to go and mollycoddle, to mentor. All that time and effort in doing that training, how much money? Because businesses are set up to make money. Come on. Let's not fool ourselves. There's no time. So if you don't fit, you don't fit. And if you don't want to be a fit and thinking that people, the business or the organizations have got to adapt to you,
yes,
then there's something very wrong with how you've been raised somehow.
Yep.
There's no time. That's not the role of the employer to mentor you.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's the role of the first teachers, and they're called your parents.
Yeah. And it's also your responsibility, I think, before you get a job, to make sure that you've trained yourself, or you've gotten the training to be suitable for that job.
But may I?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry. I think the catch words here is what the guy wrote. Devane, right? That's his name. Delay.
Yeah.
This bit is something that people didn't catch. I've been reading all this up. People didn't catch this bit. Now it's an economic crisis and a pandemic. Can we put that up on a pedestal and look at that as this is a serious moment? We need everyone, myself included, to pull our socks up. And it's not about me. Granted, there are also errant employers. Granted.
Yeah.
I am not saying there are some horrible ones. But come on. If it's an offer and acceptance affair.
Yeah.
But when you come over here, we selected you, you've come over here, we interview you, we see whether you're fit first. Then after that, we talk about your package.
Yeah.
If you don't like the package, then I would feel, if I were any employer, any HR person, that you're not a fit then.
Yeah.
You don't find us a fit for you, then which means you're not a fit for us as well.
Chris, what you're saying is absolutely right. But in the bigger picture, I think this relationship has to evolve, because like what I mean to say is, just because it's a pandemic, one does not expect that suddenly your salary, is going to be cut down to what? Half.
Well,
because that's the beggars can't be choosers attitude.
I think that is being used too loosely, though, using that old adage of beggars can't be choosers.
And maybe these young people do not want to be beggars.
No,
Yeah,
but
but
nobody's asking anyone to beg. You're working for a job.
Yeah.
Correct.
And in moments, look, this is not the first crisis in the history of mankind.
No, that's exactly it. So
Yeah.
the point is,
Yeah.
look, I agree with what you're saying. But, this whole entitlement, these people are entitled, I don't totally agree with it. Look, I've been very much like you, an employer and an employee at some point in my life. And there are certain things, oh God, they really frustrated, for example, MCs. I've had local, people working with me, and it's like, MC becomes more like an entitlement.
Medical leave.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the year. I have 14 days. I'm going to take it. But, small things like that. Or you have a manager who reports to you. And this manager is so busy doing Tai Chi la, delegate work la, Tai Chi la. And, so you meet these kind of people. And then you start wondering, because on the other side, you have somebody who's on a employment pass or a work pass, and that person
Is willing to put in
is
the...
actually, it's also the sword that is hanging over that person's head, because
Yes.
you're thinking, I need the contract to be renewed. I want to live here. I want to be in this beautiful country. So, man, if you tell me I'm just going to go that extra mile and do whatever you want, that's how the
On that note-
comparisons
Okay.
On
become
that note,
odious,
right?
you see.
On that note, right, this is where well, can I use the term paradox? Perhaps. When recently I had to get my air conditioning compressor unit changed. And that was during the time when the government, it was during circuit breaker, if I'm not mistaken, but the government had already allowed aircon
Yes,
service
essential
repair,
services,
essential
yeah,
services
yeah,
to still continue.
Yeah.
Now, to remove a compressor, I've only just learned this. You need to have a special person skilled in this. He's called an installer, or rather, their business they call these people installers. And nobody could do the job because, and most of the aircon companies said, "Sorry, we can't. You have to wait." Why? Because we don't have the installer. Where are the installers? They're in Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Yes, exactly.
No.
Yes.
But someone did it, and someone had the smarts to pivot during that period, and he rehired local Singaporean old men, but very experienced to come
remembered.
back to
Yes,
work.
yes, yes.
And I had saw two of these 60-year-old guys,
Yeah.
60-plus-year-olds come into my house. I said, "Seriously?" He said, "Don't worry. Walang kang hu eh." You know what it means?
they're
I mean,
strong.
I've got the skills, and I'm still strong. And it's true enough, man. These guys were darn strong.
Yeah.
You know, and they got the job done. Now, besides these guys, I've met another friend who just opened a new bakery in the neighborhood. My mom near around my mom's neighborhood, and we were having a cup of coffee just by chance. And he said, "You know, Chris, I have a problem. I can't get, believe it, I can't get bakers."
Yeah.
And I can't get bakers, not because there are no local bakers, but because those in studying this thing, right, don't want to work in a neighborhood bakery. They want to work in a hotel.
Yeah.
So I'm trying, but I managed to get, before the new rules came out by the MOM, I managed to get, rightly so, 2 Filipinos who can do the job.
Yeah.
And they will do the job.
Yeah.
So the issue remains that there's a lot of people who don't want to do.
Oh, of course.
No,
There's
yeah,
jobs.
yeah.
There are a
That's-
lot
that's
of
a given.
industries that are
Yeah,
shunned by
that's a
locals.
given.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So I think
And there's definitely a need for that. So
Can
let
you-
me,
But that's one of the reasons why now they keep emphasizing the conversation has moved to PMET. They're making it a bit
sure, but
more.
yes, yeah. But let me address your point there, Daisy, because I think it's very important. When you talk about this, we're not talking about negotiations. Negotiations about salaries are fine. Okay.
yeah.
You look, for example, it's like if the job is $3,000 and I think I'm worth $3,200 and I negotiate with you and I tell you why, that's fine. What this guy is referring to is someone saying my last job was $6,000. You're only paying $3,000. I want you to match that. That is entitlement. That is what we are talking about, which I find to be very wrong, is when the job obviously does not fit you or you do not fit the job, and you should not be going for this job and asking for this kind of ridiculous increase in salary.
Yeah, but and you know something, for PMET positions, correct me if I'm wrong, Gilbert, when you see an ad posted for a job, they probably wouldn't put the starting salary for PMET.
Yep.
Right? You got to go for the interview and find out. It could be a same position as the last position in the last job the guy was
In the job description.
Yeah, in the job description, but it's an SME and you work from an MNC, you cannot
Cannot
expect
compare.
the
Yeah,
same
correct.
salary.
Yeah,
So this
exactly.
job is not a fit for you then.
Yeah.
No, so
But people
I-
dox him for this, for
Yes,
this.
I know, which I think is ridiculous. It really shows the kind of level of anger out there and self-righteousness and
Yes.
self-entitlement that people have got, that when they're presented with hard truths like that, they get so angry they dox the person.
It's scary now to
So,
talk about
okay.
young people because we're all worried about getting doxxed, It's
Yes,
ridiculous,
exactly.
isn't it? To
Well,
fear
I'm
this.
glad that
No, so
Singapore
the
has got
question-
the law.
No, the
Yeah.
question, that's
Yeah.
the one that I wanted to ask you. So, do you feel that this whole idea that, Prime Minister spoke to it, about it in detail, but moving forward, do you feel that the policies or the laws need to be changed to accommodate the locals more? Or are we on the right path about this balance where...
I don't think it's a question of laws right now. What I like to address is this, okay, is that I think there's a very big difference because I lived in the US for a very long time, and I also ran a company in Singapore, and I've interviewed people. And what I have found is the huge difference is this. The majority of young people in Singapore are living with their families. Okay, this is a reality in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
When you are in the US, for example, you've moved out the house at 18 and you're living and you have to pay your rent, you become less picky about the kind of jobs that you have because you need to pay your rent. You need to survive, basically. You've moved to New York City by yourself, you're no longer with your parents, and you need to make the rent. So people don't think about things like, oh, I've got to take 3 buses to get to work, or I've got to walk a long way from the train. In my entire 20 years in the US, I never really encountered this among young people. We were all really just hungry because we needed to survive. But in Singapore, I find it's very different because the majority of young people are actually living at home. So they know they're not going to be out on the streets. They don't have to pay rent. They don't have to pay electric bills. So, they can afford to be fussy. Does not make it right. I think it actually is the problem, is that there is the complete lack of hunger. So when you look at, if you're an MNC, for example, and all things being equal, and you've got Singaporeans who are putting on all of these kinds of demands, because I have suddenly run into this before when people have said that, actually, the job is fine, the pay is fine, but your office is quite far from the MRT and you don't provide transportation for the MRT. So that became a consideration for them. So these kinds of things, which are reality, which I've certainly encountered before, put Singaporeans at a disadvantage globally. All right, if you're lucky enough, you stay in Singapore and you're working in a local company, maybe you can afford to be fussy like this. But the problem is, in the long run, Singapore will lose out, because then we have a generation of soft workers who, basically will quit or do not take jobs because they have a sense of entitlement, and the country does suffer. Because let me remind people, global companies don't need Singapore. Singapore is so tiny.
We need them.
We need them. They can move out of Singapore. All the local companies can move out of Singapore tomorrow, move to Vietnam, move to the Philippines, move anywhere else, and really they will be okay. But we will die. We cannot survive. And I think this is something that fundamentally a lot of Singaporeans seem to miss. They don't realize that we need the world. The world does not need us. There are farms and private properties in other countries that are bigger than the entire island of Singapore.
Gilbert, just to absolutely what you said, just to put that in a nutshell, it's like you first, to win in this marketplace, to win in the marketplace, you must first win in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that is about attitude
But to be
and
fair,
commitment.
But to be fair to these millennials, right? I mean, we've been talking about this, and I completely agree with everything you guys have said.
No.
But let's talk about errant employers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about employers who just treat people like dirt. There are those.
Oh,
we
yes.
admit to it. There
Yes.
are.
Yes.
There are those who, in the selection process, which I really find it very mean, things like, are you a smoker? And if you're a smoker, you can't work
I
here.
mean,
Because they think smokers waste time. I that really irks me. There are things like, especially when people hire freelancers because they can do some jobs, right? For example, whether they're writers or whether they are whether they are entertainers, and then they tell you this, we give you exposure, so do it for just $50 or for free.
Correct.
I mean, that is
of course.
really
No, but-
downright
absolutely,
rude and
but-
insulting.
So you see, what happens is, just the millennials themselves, they have to understand that all these ideas about, I'm giving you exposure, so take less money, or absolutely, and they're right to say no to that.
Yeah.
That no, you don't want to be made into a sucker.
Yeah, of course.
That's
because on
where
both
you draw
sides
the
there
line.
are abuses,
Excuse me.
Yeah.
and on both sides there are people who are not doing things right.
Yeah.
So I think that, in general, just to wrap up on this particular topic, because we could definitely go on for quite a while, I think that you have to look at it on a global perspective, kind of realize our position in the world, and also think to yourself, what kind of person you are going to be if you are going to be very picky. There's a saying that which I came across recently, which I shared with you guys. Basically, is that there's going to be shit everywhere. You can change toilets, but there's going to be shit everywhere, and you learn to deal with the shit basically. And honestly, there's no perfect company. And I can tell you that, in my own personal experience when I was working, is that I learned how to work with difficult bosses. I learned how to work in difficult conditions because I kind of realized that at that time I had no choice because I was getting my green card in the US and I needed to stick with the company. But I learned how to work with difficult bosses. And the next time when I had a difficult boss, I had learned how to deal with it. I had learned rather than quitting, you see. And I think there's something to be said
And
about
what's
that.
important is after working with so many difficult bosses, don't be a
Yes,
difficult boss,
definitely.
because you learn that this is not the right way. And
Yes.
so I think it starts from there, right? Each employer also understanding this relationship with the younger people, the ones who are educated. We've taught them to think, we've taught them to make choices, so they are making those.
This is what
Yeah, but you got to realize it's the marketplace and the marketplace
Yeah.
decides.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I
I mean,
always
Yeah.
tell my young
free-
people, we all have to go through our rites of passage. And we have to, not more than just go through our rites of passage, we have to relish in that.
Yeah.
And then even if there are things that we need to do, though we don't like them, learn to like to do the things you have to
Yes,
do.
exactly. That's called discipline.
Correct. It's just discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does you good
Yes.
in
Yeah.
terms of your character.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've agreed that there's abuse on both sides. And talking about abuse, we go into something very serious,
Yeah.
which is very troubling in Singapore. And actually, in preparing for this, I did some research and actually quite shocked at the numbers, which I will share with you guys, all right? So, another case of child abuse just came to light when a woman abused her stepson by punching and slapping him, calling him a prostitute's child. The poor boy was abused for over a period of 3 years before this came to light. Now, there have been other cases of abuse that we've read in the newspapers. Not long ago, there was this horrible case about
the couple.
the couple, their own child, they locked in a cage, poured boiling water over him, until the child died. All right. So we think, okay, these are occasional cases. I'm going to read you a statistic from the Ministry of Social and Family Development's Child Protective Service. Last year, and we're talking about the full year of 2018, okay, which is the year before, there was a record 1,163 cases of child
boy.
abuse in Singapore. Not talking about dozens, 1,000, which is a 30% jump from the 894 cases in 2017, and it's the largest number in the past
Oh
decades.
dear.
And parents or step-parents made up 90% of those who abused their children. Besides being physically hurt, many of the children were sexually violated and neglected by their own parents. And this is obviously shocking and horrifying. And one of the reasons the ministry says that there's been such a big jump is because there have been a lot more investigations. They have been training their health workers, social workers, and education workers, educators, to spot signs of child abuse and to report them. So, if that is the case, then in a way you can say that it's good that these cases are being detected, but it's horrifying that they're even happening. And last year, they made key amendments to the Child and Young Persons Act. They introduced a new enhanced care and protection order, which basically allowed the government and community leaders to support abused children and allow the ministry to apply for a court order when it assesses that it's not in the abused child's interest to be reunited with his
With the
family.
parents, yeah.
Because in the previous way, it was always that we always want to reunite them. That is the thing we work towards. So if they've been abused, you remove them for a while, you go for counseling, you give them back, and it just continues a cycle, and it's horrifying. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this, and then we'll go into another related situation there. So, Chris, you're a dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to you, and I was reading about this kid, the one that you mentioned earlier, that has been through the abuse for 3 years by his stepmother. And you know what caught me? What caught me was when he told the police officers that he loved her and did not want her to go to court.
You can see that he really had this pining for a mother
Yeah, he has a pining for a mom.
and for love.
Yeah. And then I think, how could any parent, step parent or otherwise,
Yeah, anyone. Yeah.
do these things to their kids.
Absolutely.
It's just I just cannot understand. I don't get it. And you know the you mentioned what in 2018 1,000 plus
1,163
cases. Well,
cases.
Lord,
yeah.
that's a lot
Yeah.
for a tiny little island of ours.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just the community leaders that and the authorities that could help. I think the next door neighbor.
Yes.
I think people in and around the child or children, people like you, people like me,
Yep.
and we cannot say, the famous Hokkien phrase, "Msi walang e tai chi."
Yeah.
That is not our problem. It's none of our business.
Yep.
We can't,
Yeah.
because children don't know who to run to,
Yes.
and they also have this conflicting loyalty
Yes.
as well
Yes.
to
Absolutely.
their supposed caregivers.
Yes.
So who can do this? Is the adults.
Yep.
And I think as a society and as a community in Singapore, we are not even mature enough to handle this.
Yeah.
The community. You don't need the government to step in. This is us. This is the kampong.
Yes. It's true. It takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
Everybody needs it. It's everyone's business.
Yes.
And in a place like Singapore where 80% of the people live in government housing, which is HDB, where you're so close to your neighbor, you can hear everything that's going on next door. It is impossible that somebody could keep their kid in a cage, pour boiling water, and the neighbor not
Nobody
hear
did
anything.
not, yeah.
It is really just crazy. It is impossible that you could abuse children and not hear the screams and the cries. And I'm glad to see there's actually a public service commercial that is being shown right now that tells people to intervene in cases of child abuse and to call the child abuse hotline. I think that is so important. The people cannot get away with this in Singapore if other people paid attention to them. That's a very important thing.
Yeah, but abuse, I mean, the actual, that someone is causing harm and pain to another person or an animal or whatever, whether it is mental or physical pain, you're abusing them. Child abuse, maid abuse, spousal abuse, I mean, it just goes on. But I think about it and I feel that actually most of this abuse, the abusers themselves, they have disturbed minds. Because when you are actually beating the shit out of your child, that maybe somewhere the parent knows that
Yes,
this is
yes.
not right.
Absolutely.
But their minds are disturbed. So what happens is, of course, it's a punishable offense. You have to come in and take care of that. But you start wondering then that with cases like this, where the parents are throwing hot water on their child or beating them so that the tooth falls off and your
Yes.
jaw is, rendered absolutely injured, is punishment enough? Because that is where you start understanding that these are really psychiatric problems. Because the abusers, have their own trauma and they go back, and so I think it's quite
Sure. I think the first priority is to stop the abuse.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
Then
yes.
they can figure
Yes,
out after
yes.
that
No, but
whether they need
but that's
mental
what we
health.
spoke about.
Yeah.
That the neighbors come in, the community
I think
comes
where
in,
Daisy is going with
and
this,
you go
Yeah.
deeper into it.
Yes.
One more step
where
after.
Daisy is going, this is to therapize these
Yeah,
people.
I mean,
if they are indeed
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
psychologically impacted.
After you get them, you put them in jail. It is not, I think, going to solve the problem, because they're going to come out and.
But this
have
thing can
they
also be a
changed?
vicious cycle. The abused child, if
Yes.
not taken care of early and nipped in the bud,
Yeah.
will become.
can also be, when he gets
Yes.
older,
An abuser.
an abusive person.
Because that is what they learn,
Yeah.
and that's how they learn how to deal with problems
yeah.
and to
And that's how they learn
solve
the
conflicts.
behavior, because
Yes.
they look up to their parents.
Yes.
And if my parents, who are supposed to be teaching me the right way,
Yes.
if they think this is the correct way, then hey, that is the correct way.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is so sad.
And which leads us to the topic of another issue in Singapore, which is the epidemic of maid abuse. There have been
Oh.
a lot of these cases as well. And in a typical year, there have been about 20 to 26 cases that are severe maid abuse that have been brought to court and punished with criminal. And some of these are really horrifying, where they hit the maid in the mouth with a hammer till all the teeth were broken.
Right.
They pour boiling water on the maid. So reading this whole litany is just really sickening, and it really does bring to mind the kind of psychological problems that they might have.
Now
there.
we even have a young Singaporean dude who threw a mug at a maid, breaking her nose.
And also punched her in the face. That
Yeah.
was the other report.
And
there,
then what did he say? This guy, he said, "Oh, she's just a maid."
Yes.
That's where this entitlement,
That's the
this
entitle-
word,
exactly, that sense of
it
superiority.
starts off, you
Exactly.
see.
I want to say this
For
to
one
that
so
kid:
young.
shame on you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll read to you this thing here where this maid said that her employer told her, "I have the right to slap you and to scold you and to hit you because I'm paying your salary." And this is a terrible attitude. And I think that that's part of the problem here is among some people in Singapore, maybe it's too many already, right? Even one is too many. A sense that because you pay the salary and that you are wealthier and they come from a poor country, that somehow that you have a moral superiority over these people and you can treat them as what the judge said, you treat them not as human beings, but you treat them as your property and chattel. And I think this is really wrong, and that is one of the things that needs to be
It's
addressed in
so
Singapore.
damn arrogant.
Yeah, it's
Even
absolute
if it's your
arrogance.
chattel, you don't treat your
Yeah.
chattel like shit.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
So, hey,
They probably treat
and
their-
property with the prices that you have in Singapore, they must be treating the property
Yeah,
like,
well,
But the other thing, this is physical abuse and violence. But one of the things that I know that I tell you, some people are, they know they can't break the law, but they just have this sadistic streak, and so
Yes.
they create this psychological and emotional abuse. To me, it is still
Absolutely.
abuse.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
It is still
but
abuse.
abuse is abuse.
I'll share with you my own personal encounter with somebody, luckily not a friend, but an acquaintance, who was very proud about telling me about how she kept her maid in line. And one of the things she said was, you cannot be too good to them, because in their own country they suffer a lot. So if they come here, you cannot be too good to them. I was just appalled at that mindset.
I know. And a lot of people say that, man.
Yeah.
And you know where it starts from? I am going to bloody say it. The maid agencies. You go and take a walk down Katong Shopping Centre, then you tell me whether you get disgusted. Some of them, the way they get scolded, right in front of everybody.
Oh.
Yeah? And then they make them sit there all day long. Maybe
Yeah.
they have their reasons. But the way they talk to them,
Yeah,
the
that's
way
terrible.
the way they threaten them, and of course the usual excuse, like what you said, you can't be too good to them.
Yeah.
You know something? At the end of the day,
They're human beings.
kindness begets kindness.
Yeah,
And if
absolutely.
they were to go wrong,
Yeah.
there's a reason why they're here to work.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't expect them to have all the smarts you expect them to have.
Yeah.
Now, these living in your household, you can be the mentor. This kind of job, you have to,
Provide,
because
yes.
it is the right thing to
Exactly.
do.
And every
Right.
household has its own idiosyncrasies and its own
Yeah,
needs.
yeah.
And you cannot expect them that just because they have come into your household that they know what it is that you want to do.
But
So respect is
we
the
would
key
not
thing,
be the
basically.
same if we did not have these maids.
But
I
you
mean,
gotta
they
draw-
make life
Absolutely.
so,
I mean, that
so
is, yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but granted,
You
there are
know,
also the nasty
we need to
ones who
thank
are,
them.
who
Of
are
course.
out who are out to cause mischief. There are. Let's
Yes.
admit that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're not saying they're
They're
not.
all kinds.
And if that were to happen, you don't have a choice, do you? You
Yes.
send them back.
I think that you deal
Yeah,
with it
yeah.
based on the circumstances.
Circumstances, without
Exactly.
making assumptions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, when
and
you're
always treat them with
with the-
respect.
yeah,
Yes.
you-
That's the
but you see,
thing.
there's a
Human
saying.
respect.
I mean, just to share with you, in Hindi, where basically you're telling that if there is a shoe, and even if it is the most beautiful shoe in the world, a shoe is supposed to be worn on your feet.
Yeah.
So the idea is you make sure that you don't take that shoe and start wearing it on your head. Meaning, and this is the part which is so sad that at the end of the day, in the hierarchy of things, they are down there. That's a shoe. So make sure, however much your shoe is beautiful, you are not going to give that shoe that kind of respect. Now, if these are the kind of sayings, or this is the kind of thinking, maybe culturally sometimes, like we were
But that's
talking
a terrible
moment
thinking.
back, no, I'm just saying
It sounds
that's
like
exactly what you're learning as kids, as everything.
That's a terrible
You
thing
grow
to
up
learn.
and you
So
become
those of you who
a-
listen to it, do not learn that. That is terrible. That's a different
But you know
world.
But you know,
Then it's a different word.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing
every
that's
one
the
of my
way.
helpers, I've had one helper with us for 9 years. And I'm so happy for her because
Yeah.
we're still in touch, and she's back home now, and she's happily married,
Yeah.
and she's got her own kids, and her husband is working, and he insists please don't work anymore, but she still calls us and speaks to my boy and all that. But you know what? We have this habit that, and mere agencies tell us not to do it. I don't care. I said this is my home. How I run the show is how I run the show. When she came to the house and she handed me her handphone, and I said, "Why are you giving it to me? I'm supposed to." I said, "No, you keep it
Oh,
That's,
yeah.
because you're going to be homesick."
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So please keep it, but
Yeah.
do me
Yeah.
a favor. Just know when not to use it.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
And
yes.
and how are you going to do stuff? And my wife does this. How are you going to do stuff in the house? We show them and all that stuff, and of course, first 1-2 weeks, right? But how you going to plan your work time is up to you. And she always says this. Just make sure my husband and my son taken care of. Me, never mind.
Yeah.
And that's what she says. So we give the person the freedom to also exercise initiative.
Yes.
I want to
exactly.
share something really wonderful that I just found out during the CB break. So my maid is 12 years with me yet. And of course, in the beginning, there was,
Yes,
the
always,
usual.
yeah.
But what happened is during the CB break, you're at home all the time. So we play Scrabble. So I told her, I said, "Dang, come, you play with us." First, she said, "No, ma'am. Come and play, do something. I mean, you know what?" And she sat down to play Scrabble, and oh my God,
Yeah.
she won. And then you're realizing, oh my God, the words. Because you see, sometimes we forget. When you're hiring
Yeah,
her, but you
yeah.
forget that they're educated.
Yes, absolutely.
They're doing their
Absolutely.
and she was winning away, and then it was like, oh my God, you're too clever.
There was actually something akin to this when Jeremy Montero shared on his Facebook, which I thought was a beautiful story about this foreign worker who was helping a guy with algebra. He saw the guy doing his algebra homework, stopped and helped the guy for an entire hour during his break. And it showed that this person basically was an educated person from another country, but forced by the circumstances to come here and
Correct.
to do this kind
It's
of
a
work.
lot of
so
them.
exactly.
It's a
You
lot.
know, and Singaporeans have to realize this. Don't ever think that it will never happen
to you. Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if you think you're great today, you might not be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
But
don't treat
exactly.
people like
Yes.
Irrespective.
Karma.
You
Yeah.
just respect your fellow.
Karma
Yes.
is a
Just
bitch,
like
man.
Yeah.
Karma
expect
is a
them-
bitch.
It's a bitch, yes. So let's move on now because we need to pretty soon wrap this up already. Is
Oh.
that we've been given the award there basically. Is that in Germany there's a new rule now that says that everyone with a dog needs to take them out at least twice a day.
Awesome.
And there's been a big debate about this. So, very quickly, what do you guys think about this? I think twice a day is a bit too much.
What?
I think once a day should be enough.
What?
I mean, if it's a law,
Do you
mandatory,
pee once a
really.
day?
So-
Are you kidding me, dude?
I just think that this whole
on.
rule about taking the dogs out, whoever's taking the dog out for 2 hours every day is going to benefit.
No, they didn't
Not
say
2
gonna
hours,
be one.
twice a
No.
day.
No,
Twice
but
a day.
but each time has to be an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what
okay,
the
maybe that's a
minister
bit much,
said.
yeah.
Let me.
They're gonna
Yeah.
I'm a
run
dog lover.
around.
Okay.
And,
I had
you
my
know.
I had my first son, which is a 4-legged furry guy.
Yes.
He was a golden retriever, and we love him so
great
much. And when he died, we're still in mourning. I can tell you that it's
Wow.
been 3 years, and
Wow.
and I can tell you we had to learn everything about dogs, And this dog was the one that actually made our marriage really, really strong.
Wow.
Yeah, really, and prepared us to how to raise our son. Frankly,
Interesting.
no, I'm not kidding. I'm
no.
not kidding. I mean, for those of you who don't have that sort of relationship with a dog, I can understand
Yeah,
you
we
wouldn't
make-
understand it. But for kids, man,
He's
No,
getting.
I know what you're saying. It's your child. It's your first
It's not
child.
just that. It's what the dog does
The
for you.
unconditional
Yeah, yeah.
love.
Very.
Yeah,
It taught us that much, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And big dogs. If you got a big dog, people say can't keep a big dog in an apartment. Not true. But we know that we have to bring a big dog down at least twice a day. And big
Okay.
dogs don't like to pee at home. Though they can be toilet trained at home, but they don't like it because they don't like to mess up the place where they live. So it's true, they can think and they feel. So come on, it's the same as us. We can't hold our pee the whole
Chris,
day.
Yeah,
you can't
you know?
make this into a rule because if you, as they grow older and
Why
get
do,
arthritis,
why
for
do we
example,
why do we need that rule?
tough.
Yes.
I
for
believe
them
me,
to-
my dog had arthritis and then I had to put him down because of it. So I can tell you this much. There are people
Yes.
who are absolute idiots.
Yes, that's probably the reason why they need
Yes,
to make the rule.
you would
basically.
not believe how animals get abused,
Yes,
yeah?
yeah.
No, we
Even
know.
here,
Yeah.
even here.
But
yeah.
when-
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't care.
Yeah.
And they leave the guy soaked in his own pee. And
Yeah, I
they don't
know,
walk the
we've-
dog, you know? And because they're just lazy. They don't understand the responsibility. The worst thing is that they abandon
Yes.
them.
Well, you know,
But
SPCA
if you
says.
have a rule like this, just thinking aloud, and I agree all, because we've also always had dogs and love them, and yes, but how do you monitor something like this? Is this owner going to be able to take the dog out twice every day and 1 hour? when
I
they
think
have
it's
to
to
run?
give them
Just
the
to
legal
understand.
teeth that if there is a need to
Complain,
prosecute them,
then you
yes,
can-
then you have got a
somebody's
legal
there with
basis.
a stopwatch
Yes,
saying,
it's not
"Hey,
so much one
that
of
was not-
monitoring. That's the thing.
That was not
But
one
to your
hour."
point about Singapore and abuse is SP says in many cases neglect in Singapore, housed in cages with wired flooring,
Oh, God.
fed inadequate diets, left in a corridor, tied up without company most of the day, dirty conditions, and absolute neglect. And
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
The
So,
neglect is the worst.
yeah, the neglect
Yeah.
is
It's
because they
the
are such
worst.
social animals. They
Okay.
really do
That's
need
so
us.
we're talking about abuse again.
Yes,
Maid
abuse again.
abuse,
Yes.
animal abuse.
Abuse
I
and child
think we've
abuse.
got a lot
Yeah.
of people out there who need to rethink.
Yes.
You know what? You guys know me well by now. All these things, they're just a bunch of bloody bullies.
Bullies, absolutely. They are just picking on those who cannot fight back,
Yeah.
whether they are maids, domestic
Try
helpers.
that
you know.
on
And that
me.
is a
Yes.
problem. It's a disturbed mind.
Yeah, or it could
that is
just be
going
callousness
back-
and selfishness and
And
entitlement,
that has to
you
be
know.
stopped.
Yeah,
At a very young
absolutely.
age, you break that mug on that maid
Yep.
and break her nose.
By the way-
you need us.
Yeah.
Doxing is also bloody abuse.
Yes, absolutely. So let's wrap up right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris, what do you give us your thoughts, and then me
What?
and then Daisy, basically.
Okay? My thoughts.
Basically,
You're
yes.
not gonna be doing that thing. Okay.
I think we're out of time, so we'll save that for
Okay,
another
okay, yeah,
another
yeah, yeah.
juicy
Okay.
topic for
So
next
today
week.
you're gonna ask me
Everything
the quote first,
sexy
is it?
is going to be later.
I have a quote. Finally,
Oh wow!
Oh,
okay.
wow.
but I'm not gonna do the Omar Khayyam thing. Neither am I gonna do the Gandhi thing.
What about Bob Marley?
I've
Who
already
you
done
been-
Bob Marley
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah, but you've been quoting him.
But I found something relevant. And it's from none other than Sting.
Ooh.
Okay.
And it's relevant. Now listen to this. You ask yourself, who'd watch for me? A solitary voice to speak out and set me free. I hate to say it, but it's probably me.
And
She doesn't get it.
Routine, no,
She
I
only
didn't
understands
get the
Omar
connection.
Khayyam. She
no,
only
I
gets-
didn't get the connect. I'm
This
sorry.
is not fair.
I will think through it again.
We have to understand
I'm
her
sorry.
Omar Khayyam, but she doesn't get Sting.
No, I've been stung by Sting, man. I've been stung. I'm gonna
Good music,
think
though.
through.
Good music.
But you know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it
yeah,
means,
yeah,
right? You know what it means, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be me.
Yeah.
It's gotta be me. Because if no one's gonna take care of you, no one's gonna watch out for you and speak out for you, then it just probably
Yeah,
has to
and
be
also
me.
I see it as another dimension beyond that is that you have to be the one to speak out. You have to be the one to defend those who cannot defend themselves. You have to be the one to report to the police when you see abuse.
That's from Stung.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Don't
then what about-
don't
what
pass
ab-
the buck.
No, but
There is
what
a
about-
saying, if not me, who? If not now, when? It is entirely up to us. So for my parting words for this week basically is watch out for each other, not just for ourselves, basically. There are a lot of people out there who do need help and who are weaker and vulnerable. Don't be the abuser, because that is a given. Do not be the abuser, but also do not be the one who allows the abuser to get away with it by just closing your eyes, because then you're complicit in that. Be safe, but be kind. Daisy.
Okay, so no Omar Khayyam. Okay, I'm stung by sting, but let's face it, okay? The burning issue, what we've been talking about, and it really, really interests me, is about Singaporeans feeling deprived. So this is going to be a work in progress.
Deprived.
No, of this whole job,
Of what?
and we were talking about.
Okay, I was
So
just
I
wondering, you
feel-
use the word depravity and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Or
No, but
deprived of
it's
what? Yeah.
and we understand it's impossible to change anything overnight. So I just feel out there that the world is changing, everything along with that is changing, the new normal is there, and in the words of author Ben Simpson,
Who?
he's not as famous as Sting, unfortunately, but I just want to say that turned on people figure out how to beat the competition. Turned off people only complain about being beaten by the competition. So what I'd like to say is, don't be turned off, people. Be strong. Take on the competition.
Don't
and
be
we'll
turned
all progress
Be
together.
turned on.
Yeah, be
I knew he
turned
was going
on.
to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Why did you even go there?
All right. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's it for this show. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like, subscribe, follow us, give your comments, and we'll see you in another episode next week of In Our Humble Opinion. Thank you all for joining us.
Namaste.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye. Be kind.